Why? Some empaths quietly cut everyone off and never go back. It looks sudden from the outside. One day they're present, the next they're gone. No argument you can point to, no dramatic exit, just a silence so clean it makes people call them cold. But what you're seeing isn't coldness, it's completion. Most empaths don't leave in the moment they get hurt. They leave after the moment they realize their hurt will never be safe with you. Stay with me, because I'm going to name the exact instant an empath decides, internally, I'm done, even if they still love you. And later, I'll explain why certain apologies actually lock the door permanently, even when you think you're doing the right thing. Empaths don't just listen to language. They listen to the space around language. They notice tone that doesn't match the words. They notice effort that fades before anyone admits it faded. They notice the small dismissals people don't even count as dismissals. That's why an empath can sit in a room full of people and still be okay, but one conversation can drain them for hours. Their system is doing constant emotional interpretation, and that has a cost. At first, they try what emotionally healthy people try. They communicate carefully. They don't come in with attack. They come in with repair. They say, when you do that, it stings. They say, I need consistency. They say, I don't feel considered, sir. They often say it gently enough that you can miss how serious it is. Then the pattern begins, not one big event, a sequence. They bring a need. You respond with an explanation. They bring a boundary. You respond with a justification. They bring pain. You respond with a defense. Slowly, the empath learns something that changes the entire relationship. Honesty doesn't lead to safety here. Honesty leads to debate. And once a relationship becomes a place where feelings get debated, the empath starts leaving in increments. Most people assume the empath leaves when the relationship is clearly broken. Often, the empath leaves when the relationship is almost good, because almost keeps them hoping, and hope keeps them tolerating. Tolerance can look like love until you realize it's costing you your dignity. Here's what that looks like in real life. They send a voice note late at night. Not dramatic, just honest. Something tender, something they don't say to most people. You reply the next day with a joke, not even a cruel joke, just something light. To you, it means, I'm keeping things easy. To them, it means, my tenderness doesn't land here. That doesn't always cause a fight. It causes a note their nervous system records. A lot of empaths learned early that connection requires management. Read the mood, prevent conflict, smooth the tension, be the emotional adult in the room, so later they become skilled at holding space for others. But the hidden wound is this. They're used to carrying emotional weight alone. That's why the cutoff doesn't begin with anger. It begins with fatigue. They start noticing how often they translate themselves so you don't feel uncomfortable, how often they soften their truth so you don't feel accused, how often they do the emotional work of two people and call it understanding. Then one day, something small happens that is not small to them. You dismiss their boundary as too much. You forget the one thing they asked you to remember. You minimize the impact and focus on your intent. You turn their pain into a personality flaw, and it doesn't create an explosion. It creates a decision, not a loud decision, a private one. Here's the part most people don't see. Empaths don't usually cut you off when they're angry at you. They cut you off when they get angry at themselves for staying. That's a different kind of anger. It doesn't want revenge. It wants peace. Now, the exact instant the empath decides, I'm done, is rarely the moment you hurt them. It's the moment you hurt them and then make them feel wrong for being hurt. That's the instant their body learns, my pain is not safe here. And when the body learns that, the mind eventually follows. Here's a simple example. They say, when you disappear after we talk, I spiral. You reply, You're needy. I need space. You might genuinely need space. That could be true. But the empath learns a deeper lesson. My vulnerability will be judged here. After that, they stop bringing vulnerability to you. Then they stop bringing themselves. This is why the cutoff looks sudden from the outside. You didn't witness the internal timeline. The empath was leaving quietly, piece by piece. They left the first time they stopped explaining. They left the next time they stopped asking. They left again when they stopped initiating. They left the day they realized your apologies weren't changing the pattern. Silence doesn't always mean everything is fine. Often silence means the empath has already started grieving the relationship while still being inside it. They mourn what they hoped you could be. They mourn the version of you they kept waiting for. They mourn the future they built in their mind and kept trying to make real through effort. So when they finally cut off, it doesn't feel like a breakup to them. It feels like the end of a long delay. Now, why do they never go back? Because leaving isn't just leaving you. It's leaving a self, the self that overfunctioned, the self that made excuses for disrespect, the self that apologized for needing basic care, the self that stayed longer than it should have because they were trying to be good. And when they finally step away, something happens that scares them and relieves them at the same time. Their body calms down, they sleep deeper, their chest loosens, their mind stops rehearsing conversations. They stop checking their phone like it's a threat. At first, that calm can feel strange, even empty, not because it's wrong, but because their nervous system was used to emotional noise. Chaos can feel like closeness when it's all you've known. Then the calm becomes addictive in the healthiest way, and now you are not competing with their feelings for you. You are competing with their peace. This is where most people try the wrong strategy. They think the way back is bigger emotion, more messages, longer apologies, grand gestures. But an empath doesn't return because the words get louder. An empath returns only when the nervous system feels safe. Now, let's talk about why certain apologies lock the door permanently. Here's the mistake. You apologize for your intent, not for their experience. I didn't mean it like that. That's not what I meant. You misunderstood me. You're taking it the wrong way. Those sentences can sound reasonable. They can sound mature. But to an empath, they land like this. Your pain is an interpretation problem, not a reality I need to respect. And in that moment, the empath realizes something terrifyingly clear. If I come back, I will have to keep proving my feelings are valid. So they refuse. Another real-life moment. They tell you, when you flirt with other people in front of me, I feel humiliated. You say, I'm just friendly. You're insecure. In your mind, you're explaining. In their body, you're invalidating. The relationship doesn't break in the argument. It breaks in the lesson. My boundary will be mocked. Here. This is why sorry doesn't always work. Because sorry, without behavioral change, is not repair. It's a reset button for the person who benefits from the pattern. Empaths aren't looking for perfect people. They're looking for accountable people, someone who can say, I see what that did to you, without turning it into a courtroom. Someone who can hold discomfort without rushing to defend themselves. Someone who can care about impact, not just intention. 'Cause defense doesn't heal. Defense just keeps the same wound alive in a cleaner outfit. Here's a truth that stings, but it's important. Sometimes an empath says, I understand, when what they really mean is, I'm scared you'll leave if I don't. Sometimes their compassion is genuine, and sometimes their compassion is a strategy they learned to survive. Being understanding can become a way to avoid abandonment, so they overgive, they overexplain, they overforgive, they make themselves smaller so the connection stays intact, until one day their body refuses. And when the body refuses, the mind finally calls it what it is, self-abandonment. That's why some empaths cut everyone off so sharply. Soft boundaries got negotiated, Gentle boundaries got ignored. Clear boundaries got punished. So they choose the only boundary that can't be argued with: absence. Now, if you're the empath watching this, you might feel guilt because empathy comes with conscience. You might wonder if you're cruel for cutting people off. Ask yourself something more precise. Did you leave to punish them, or did you leave to protect yourself? Punishment wants suffering. Protection wants peace. And if your body is calmer without them, that's not drama, that's data. Here's one action step, simple enough to actually do today. Open your notes app and write one sentence answering this question: what am I tolerating that I would never want someone I love to tolerate? Write the sentence. Don't make it poetic, make it honest. Then turn it into one boundary sentence you can say out loud, even if your voice shakes. Going forward, I won't stay in situations where I have to silence myself to keep peace. That sentence is not aggression. It's self-respect. If you want a second sentence that keeps you from getting pulled back in by a pretty apology, use this: if something matters to me, I will watch the pattern, not the promise. Now, if you're the person who got cut off, your action step is different, and it requires humility. Stop asking, why are they doing this to me? Ask, what did they repeatedly try to tell me that I minimized, explained away, or postponed? Because the cutoff is usually the answer to that question. If you ever reach out, don't lead with, I miss you. Don't lead with, can we talk? Don't lead with emotion. Lead with accountability that is specific. I see the pattern I created. I understand the impact it had. This is what I'm doing differently, starting now. Even then, they may not return. Not because they're cruel, but because returning would require them to return to the older version of themselves that accepted too little. And they finally respect themselves too much to do that. Now, there's a deeper layer to why some empaths cut off almost everyone. Sometimes it's not that everyone is terrible. It's that the empath is finally seeing their own role in the cycle. They're seeing how often they used empathy to earn love, how often they used forgiveness to keep access, how often they used understanding to avoid being abandoned. Then they test something simple. They stop being the one who checks in first. And suddenly, the relationship goes quiet. Not because they're playing a game, because the only engine was them. That moment hurts, but it also clarifies. They weren't being met. They were being used. Used for attention, used for emotional labor, used for forgiveness, used for the way they make things feel okay. So they withdraw access, not as punishment, as a boundary. Let me say it plainly. Empaths don't cut people off because they're fragile. They cut people off because they're finally strong enough to stop negotiating with what hurts. And if you're alone after cutting people off, that loneliness might not be a sign you made the wrong decision. It might be your nervous system detoxing from chaos. Peace can feel empty before it feels like home. If this video put words to something you've lived, subscribe. Not because I want a number, but because the next conversation is where you stop repeating the pattern with a new person who feels different at first. In the next video, I'm going to show you why empaths start doubting themselves after cutting people off, and how that doubt becomes the doorway that lets the same dynamic back in. Once you learn the early signs, you won't just protect your heart, you'll protect your future.